Negotiation is not bargaining. The media contributed to that confusion by starting to issue movies about negotiators being hard and hostile and very assertive, which is absolutely not true. It's probably the worst example of negotiation.
It's a real balancing act because some of that's necessary. Like, I don't know everything. I should listen to some other people. But at the same time, you do have to assert yourself. So there's a balance to be struck, I think.
The biggest thing that may slow down or even prevent business is disrespect. So we actually are willing to give up money to feel important. Influence is a broader concept. It's really not about getting title. That it doesn't matter how much power you have. What makes a difference is when people are aware of those principles and they know what that means.
First of all, thank you for joining us today. And let's start with negotiation. Most people think negotiation is about bargaining over price. What would you tell us negotiation is?
Yeah, well, that's a great question, David, to start off. And before we start, I wanted to say thank you so much for having me here. I really appreciate your invitation. It's a really comfortable and welcoming environment, and I appreciate your podcast that you're building. You're really building a lot of knowledge and a lot of skills awareness for people, and that's important thing that you do. And I think that we professionals should do more of this to learn from each other rather than learn from the institution or on the corporate, because learning from each other is very important. I realize that learning from each other, it's much more sticky, if you would, rather than just go in and read a book and go into a class and listen in. So thank you very much for doing that. So regarding negotiation, so you're absolutely right. Many people ask me, how do I negotiate the price? I want to negotiate the price. Or I come to people and I say, well, I can help you negotiate. What do you want me to do? And they say, well, we don't have a contract yet. When we have a contract, then we'll negotiate over the price. And I always say that of course we can do that. At the same time, negotiation is not bargaining. It probably came from the confusion caused by Harvard University that started to educate people about the contract negotiation. And as they educate people, they actually put the most emphasis on how to negotiate the terms in that contract. And one of the terms, of course, is the price. It's probably the central term. And because of this, people get a perception that it's all about price. Though, in fact, Harvard is teaching how to negotiate the timelines and conditions and delivery and rental and myriads of other stuff as part of the contract, but it comes to a perception that price is central. Well, of course it's central because price is a transfer of value from one side to another in exchange to another value. So the other thing is the media kind of contributed to that confusion by starting to issue movies about negotiators being hard and hostile and very assertive and pushy and power playing, and it feels like this is about negotiation, which is absolutely not true. It's probably the worst example of negotiation. So in fact, the negotiators are soft, they are collaborative, they're supportive, they're respectful, and very good at making you speak. So they are very good listeners, and they are not really going after the price. They look at the picture, the broad picture. They want to understand what you're going through, what you feel about it, what's important for you, and they start to learn about your problem and they help you solve that problem. How they help solve the problem, they help through guiding you through your decision-making process. So they also need to learn your decision-making process. So this is what negotiators do. One of my clients actually learned a concept about nurturing, and nurturing is about creating a safe and comfortable environment in a conversation. So it's about making the other side feel connected and heard. And what she said to me after she started to learn about nurturing. She said, "Oh, I noticed that my CEO is using nurturing all the time. He is very grateful and appreciative. He recognizes me and validates my point. So he never kind of go cross my point and say like, well, that is not true. And he never does that. He recognizes that and he contributes to the conversation, to the dialogue, rather than he's trying to be smart. So many of the company leaders, they deliberately invest in learning the negotiation principles and how to nurture, how to support people, how to create that safe environment for conversation. So um, the secret is that many top leader many top leaders invest in communication skills. They hire negotiation coaches because it helps them lead the people versus telling them what to do versus playing the power game. Playing power game is actually not really helpful, though maybe it looks good in movie when a powerful leader comes and say, okay, do this, do that. But the fact is, many decisions are made by people, and it's much better to give people a purpose and get them on the same page and negotiate their support rather than telling them what to do. So from this perspective, negotiation is not about bargaining over price. Negotiation is much wider. Essentially, it's about making agreement with people who have a right to say no and walk away without consequences. Therefore, it's not about finding a leverage and cornering someone into a solution because they don't have any other option because you cornered them. No, it's actually how to actually guide them through the decision so they will offer you a solution that works for you and you will find common ground. How do you actually make agreement with somebody more powerful than you? Let's say I am a corporate employee, I am negotiating with CEO about the change. I don't have any power over CEO. He has power or she has power over me. Still, I can negotiate with CEO about important issue that is going on that we can discuss and find a solution that works. Maybe not only for me, but people like me who needs a solution, looking for a solution and setting the priority. So that's what negotiation really is about, making agreements with between two or more parties where each party has a right to veto, say no, walk away. And that's the definition of freedom between three people, agreement between three people.
That's more a lasting agreement when it's made freely and a better long-term strategy, I would think, rather than a short-term dunk or win on an adversary. It reminds me of sales to an extent. I know you use that in the explanation, but sometimes early on in sales, I found that it's easy to think that you should play a role rather than be yourself and just listen to the other person and try to help them. So the goal, well, maybe there's multiple goals, but I don't think the goal should be like task based, like I need to get this amount of money out of this person, but just actually understand them, because you might find that they have more needs that could be a better long-term strategy. Maybe you have a partner that you could introduce them to, or you could help them in multiple ways. So yeah, being open, empathetic, and listening, you mentioned, I think are good skills to keep in mind. You have a lot of experience, obviously. What is one common problem that you see that, if not solved, will slow down business?
That's a very good question because this common problem happens everywhere. And when I think about it, I think that the biggest thing that may slow down or even prevent business is disrespect. And you may think like disrespect is something like being rude to others, but actually not like that. So disrespect actually comes from the Latin word regard, and it means that people need to regard each other and regard and take into account the other person's needs, their emotional state, their interests, their circumstances, their aspirations, their values, and maybe even their identity, who they are, who they think they are. And when people do not discover that, when people do not look into that and maybe kind of gloss over it and don't really pay enough attention to it, then it appears as being disrespectful. And maybe very common example here is somebody is telling you um, like we need to do it this way, or we need to approach that in 1 year. Let's say your boss is saying, well, we can consider you taking on new responsibility that needs to be after 1 year. And then you may think like, oh, 1 year, it's too long. Maybe I can ask about something shorter term. And you say, well, I can do it after 3 months. That's no problem. I have a lot of qualities. But when you actually give some information about this and you kind of ignore the circumstances around where that limitation was posed and why it was posed, it may sound like an argument, and we may inadvertently get into argument and it may sound disrespectful. So the boss may say like, well, I'm talking about 1 year, why my employee is actually overriding me and talking about 3 4 months. It doesn't really play along with me, and my employee doesn't even care to know why I say 1 year. They are arrogant and they are just gloss over what's important here. So now I need to get back and explain, or I have a choice just to say, no, it's not going to be like that. It's going to be 1 year. That, I'm more powerful. I have more authority to say that. I'm setting the game here, setting the rules of the game here. So from this perspective, it's very easy to get into argument and lose respect. And at the same time, respect is very important because it regulates safety. So imagine someone who is disrespectful for you. What is your biggest concern about that?
I guess it would be contextual. If it's private and they're disrespectful, this might be true in public too, but I think that it would make me question how much I could trust them as like a partnership. Um, Maybe they would undermine my decisions,
Mhm,
or and on a personal level, I guess we all have an ego and a certain amount of confidence, and so it could be a bit, depending on how healthy that is, it could be a bit of an attack on that, which could perhaps diminish your performance. Maybe you start second guessing yourself. It's a real balancing act because some of that's necessary. Like, I don't know everything. I should listen to some other people. But at
mhm.
the same time, you do have to assert yourself. So there's a balance to be struck, I think.
Well, the thing is, if you have an option, there is one person who is maybe not that sharp, but very respectful to you, and then there's another person who is very sharp, very clever, but really is not is not regarding you as a player,
Yeah.
as a team member, doesn't really care, disrespects you, and who would you be who would you choose to work with? And I bet majority of the people would choose the person who really respects you and maybe not as sharp, but you will be more comfortable to work with them because you don't really know if that person disrespects you. If you start your input into the project and a common goal, you don't even know if they take advantage of you. Will they disregard your interest? Will they actually take, the whole project and go away with with that, and you have nothing, and they take the full credit? You
Mhm.
have a lot of risks because
Mhm.
you really don't have a proof that they care about you. They disrespecting you, right?
Yeah.
So one of the you wanted to make a comment?
Well, I agree. I commented there because you made me think of business and trying to get a job, for example. You fill out a resume, and you might recall when you did this. You can spend a lot of time on the resumes. It's just one or few, or maybe a couple pages, but there's so much time choosing the perfect word, the perfect sentence, going over, like not sharing too much because then it dilutes actually the impact of your resume, but making sure you share the crucial bits and having multiple revisions and just sending it out time and again. And maybe you get a call back, maybe you don't. And then you notice there's like one bullet point that's just a little bit off, or one word is misspelled, and it's like everything is wrong at that point. And it's like, but don't you see that I put in like 100 hours on this and like 99% of that was perfect? And just because I did that 1% that's not perfect, why should I be judged as not a good candidate? And I think, as unfair as it may seem, the that's you at your best. So if you at your best are going to disrespect the person viewing it, that they notice a mistake that you didn't take the time to, you didn't do the proper review to notice, then the assumption is, on probability, sure there are exceptions, but on probability, you're going to make even more mistakes when they're not looking, when the stakes are not as high. So
Yeah,
that's what that reminded me of.
yeah, absolutely. And that's a very good example because people are fearful to accept an employee who would be disrespectful of the job. So your first job is to do your resume. If you're disrespectful to your job to do the resume perfectly, though you have unlimited time, unlimited resources, you're acting in your own interest. If you actually cannot do it perfectly, and people may look even deeper than that, they may look into like how you actually phrase that, how impactful you are, how impressive you are, and other things. So if you are disrespectful of that job, how respectful would you be in the job that I will delegate to you? Maybe you will not really care. Maybe you will care more about, I don't know, doing something else, but not this. So yeah, it is. It is a multiple things here at play, but at the same time, yeah, you say fair. The word fair is actually very important. And fairness is really closely connected to respect. So essentially, let me give you an example. There was a very interesting experiment made by three German researchers in psychology, and it's called the ultimatum game. And the ultimatum game has two stages. In the first stage, there are two players. In the first stage, player number one is given an amount of money, like $10, for example. And the first player needs to create a split between the first player and the second player. And the second stage, the second player, whether accepts the split and everybody get the money, or rejects the split and nobody get the money. And the initial assumption of the researchers was that the second player will be indifferent to the split. The second player will be accepting any split no matter what, because second player doesn't lose anything. But it was quite the opposite. So almost all of splits that were not near equal were rejected. So the second player trades the regard, the fairness of the split for money. So we actually are willing to give up money to feel important in any game. Otherwise, we say it's unfair game. We don't play that. So from this perspective, fairness is very closely connected to respect. And if the game is not fair, you will be fearful, you will be scared to make partnership with the person. You will say, I'm not going to move forward with this business because it's not respectful. It's disregarding my interests. And if this disregarding my interests, it's unfair. Therefore, I will prefer to make business with somebody else. And of course, you have plenty of choices with business. We just need to apply our time and talent and find the right partner. So from this perspective, if you're in business, you need to know how to play a fair game and how to project that the game is fair. If there is something, if a split is unequal, you make sure that you negotiate that and you actually take into account the interest of the other side, not just gloss over it and say, because I'm player number one, I can set any game. So if you set any game that seems to be unfair to the player number two, they will just ignore it. They will just say, well, I'm not playing that.
Yeah. I have started looking at sales, business, salaries, all of this as an exchange of value. Once again, rather than focusing on just some arbitrary number because it looks nice or sounds nice, understanding the value, because I think that gives me confidence to enter into negotiation without feeling it's more of like a curious, more of a growth mindset rather than a fearful like, oh, I can't lose this position that I don't fully understand. How can negotiation help with sales?
Negotiation is very important in sales. Essentially, the approach to sales where you just say, well, take it or leave it, has very limited application. So essentially, when people buy from you, they reject their trust. And therefore, sales is all about building trust, especially if you sell a custom product or service that is really not like really different from anything on the market, where it it addresses a specific problem. And where is the competition? There's a lot of options. So from this perspective, um, it's about building trust to you yourself, to your product and service, and also to your company. So it's important. And if the trust is not there, you'll get objections, you will get uh, people shying away, and people just plainly say, I'm not interested. So in many cases, what we're seeing right now, people like on LinkedIn, they reaching out daily with, you know, dozens of messages, and they just pitch to you without building any trust. And this is the approach based on projecting value and luring people by value. And some of the people promising you gold mines, they say, well, I give you everything for free. And still they've been rejected. And they've been still being rejected at the same rate as people who are offering something reasonable. Why? Because there's a less and less trust to this. And you know, the first thing you need to do when you're in sales, you need to know how to quickly build trust to people. You need to build rapport. You need to connect with people on deeper level. You need to build mutual purpose. You need to tell them that you have, you know, similar values, similar goals, and you actually in support of what they do, rather than just appear to be transactional and assertive. And believe it or not, people will choose those who ask more, but being more connected to you, rather than those people who will uh, ask much less but being jerks. I have a very good example from real estate experience. So my real estate agent, um, I made a few deals with him, and he has a very good broker for lender broker, who offers financing, and he's cheap. He's so, you know, so attractive rates. But when you start talking to him, you instantly getting offended, you are uncomfortable, and nobody goes with him, though he is really trying to push it hard with giving you discounts. And I talked to my real estate agent. I said, David, um, I would I would like to, you know, I like the rates, but this guy is just confuses me and making me uncomfortable. And he is saying like, yeah, I wish somebody will tell him. So when he doesn't, it's not comfortable to tell him about this. But you know, being not connected with your client, with your prospect, is actually hurting your business, and you better figure that out as soon as possible. So how negotiation helps with sales? Negotiations helps you to build trust with people, overcome negativity, overcome their hesitance, maybe some preconceived baggage about you, emotional baggage, like saying like all the car salesmen are sleazy and manipulative, right? There's a common pattern. When you go to a dealership, you expect that, right? How do you overcome that? That's pretty important. And that's how negotiation and the principles and the system of negotiation helps you to put things in the right sequence. You have a system to perform and solve one problem after another, seeing the problem and solve one problem after another, and knowing how people psychologically go through the decisions and guiding them through that process.
How can we overcome negativity and build trust quickly?
Yeah, that's super important because negativity is probably the number one killer of all the deals. So once people become negative, and people may be negative in the first place, so it's about building rapport. From the first second you interact, you come to a setting, you come to a sales call, you start to build trust right away, you start to build rapport right away, and that process doesn't stop. So uh, when people do not have rapport, they've been defensive, they don't give you the right answers or right depth of the answers, and it becomes you need to kind of whether trick them into giving you the right answers or you need to leave. And many people actually give up. They don't know how to overcome that. They kind of plow through the negativity and try to no notice that and just go through that. But it makes them feel more and more anxious when they come to the decision, when they need to ask you whether you'll go with that or not. They ask you to buy what they sell, and it become very emotional. And many times they just say they get the objection. They get the objection. I need to think about this. I will make my decision after a year. I was not going to buy today, or any other. I need to talk to my wife, my husband, and that's they see as like they stuck because that's not real answer. That's a smokescreen, and they don't even know how to bypass that. But most of the time, the problem is people just not comfortable sharing the real answer because of the negative emotions. They are also scared. They're also scared. So how to be how to overcome negativity quickly? So there are a number of things you can do. So the first one is called nurturing, and nurturing, I would say it's like a paramount skill that everybody should have. It is pretty much about creating a supportive environment, supportive, safe, appreciative, and fostering the good emotions. And it may take a form of reflective listening, where you actually reflect on what you just heard, and acknowledgement, when you actually just repeat what they said to you and you acknowledge that you know what was their message. Recognition, validation, appreciation, and liking. And there are other advanced forms of that, but in in the most um, easiest form, if somebody is saying to you, I don't know, they say like, well, I need to fix my roof because it's leaking, right? So the minimum thing you say you can just acknowledge that, and you say, yeah, roof needs to be repaired. It's just acknowledgement. It's very simple. Or you can actually validate them. You can say, well, that's a good point, your roof really needs repairment. So you validate them, you telling them that they're following the right path. That's a good point. That's really good decision. So that's very nurturing. Sometimes negativity goes against you, and they say, well, your price is too high. And instead of so what's the most common reaction to that, saying like your price is too high? What people usually do? What do you think, David?
Well, they could try to justify it,
Yeah,
justify their price.
yeah. How do they usually justify it?
Maybe list the things that they're doing, like, oh, I'm giving you this item, I'm giving you my time, and just listing the costs to them.
Hmm. Yeah, or they try to compare, give you more information,
Mm.
try to educate you. So the problem with that is if you try to do this right away, they may not really see it as justification. They may see it as an argument,
Mm.
and they may see it as a game where one person is right and the other is wrong. They need to give up their commitment to what they say. right? So versus if they say your price is too high and you say, yeah, we are very expensive. Like, how does that sound? If somebody's saying like, yeah, we are very expensive,
Right. Sounds like maybe they should shop around and try to find a better price.
right? And at the same time, it's direct, it's very open, it sounds honest, it sounds upfront, and it's surprising. Like who actually tells you like, yeah, we are very expensive. When you say your price is too high, you say, yeah, we are expensive. And this is what one of the companies, L'Oreal, they kind of build the whole um, marketing campaign around this. They say we are expensive, but you deserve it.
Hmm,
So it is it was very
that's well
influential.
done.
When you say we are expensive, you are actually nurturing their thought. We are, indirectly we are saying, yes, you are right. You have a right thought. That's a good point. We are expensive. And after you nurture them, you can say, what's your budget for this repair? What's your budget to solve the problem? They don't have resistance to tell you because they don't see that you start to argue with them. They don't see that you're against them. You actually supportive of them and you're supportive of their thoughts, and um, then you may actually ask a subsequent question. What's your experience about pricing? Who do you compare with? And they may say, well, we just don't have a budget for that. Or they say, well, we compare, our neighbors did the similar repair 3 years ago, and that's what we compare to. And you can work with that. You can say, yeah, that makes sense because 3 years ago it was a different market situation. Shall we look at the numbers to determine objectively? So you get them to analysis rather than you arguing with them. Uh, or you can ask them what kind of data point do you need to make a good comparison. So you're guiding them through this decision. So they, instead of saying like this is a final decision, your the price is too high, you're actually guiding them to actually go and verify that. Make sense?
It does. Once again, you're involving them in the process. There, like you said earlier, there isn't this power dynamic, and it's interesting hearing that from you. I didn't even notice some elements of that previously. How people could be kind of stuck in a negative mindset, or a defensive mindset. So great points there. I would like to pivot slightly to talking about another area that you have expertise in, and that is influence. We all know the word, we see it used all the time on social media, with social media influencers. But in your own words, in your own understanding, what is influence and how do the principles of influence help in business?
Yeah, it's very interesting that many people associate the word influence with the influencers now, and people who are on the media and they try to get people excited about something, and they acting like uh, uh, on the media and TV or movie, and maybe they advocating for a certain goal in mind. At the same time, influence is a broader concept, and it's really not about getting title and collecting likes on social media. The principles of influence actually are wired into us. Uh, this is how we brought up, and at the same time, they're wired into us, for a long time, and it's becoming it's a culture. So the principles was there in before the ancient times, prehistorical times, if you would. And Dr. Robert Cialdini discovered, and by the way, they were discovered many times before, in ancient Greek and Roman and European culture. And the most recent research, Dr. Robert Cialdini actually did a research on the significant principles and boiled down, all the psychological finding on persuasion. He found the seven common patterns, and he called them seven principles of influence. So it's about how do we react to certain things. So for example, because we are social creatures, you know, the whole our life is, you know, built around certain groups of people. We can't really exist alone. We're seeking other people in our life, and we collaborate and we do some big projects and whatever. So that's what we call business. And in the ancient times, people would organize in groups, in tribes, and then they compete with each other, and sometimes they get into a conflict in the war. What did they do to actually make peace? They would come to each other and they would bring gifts to each other. And accepting the gift was a sign of accepting the peace. And that triggered another process when the other side would actually visit the other tribe, and they would bring the gifts too. And this is how they make peace. So why is that? Because it becomes a signature of turning negativity into positivity, creating new experience of sharing, and that's how the social principles work. This is how we are being taught in abroad. When we are little children, we have no idea, but we are taught by our children, by our parents, how to interact with other children, how to give them, what we have, and how to accept what they give to us, and what to do, how to say please and thank you. Like, it's all about those principles. And those principles are so universal that you can apply them pretty much everywhere. There is no country on the planet that doesn't know about reciprocity. It is so universal that people accept others much more when they feel they are of the same group than the others, that it becomes a universal principle. For example, um, as a Russian immigrant, if I go to a club where all the Russian immigrants, they will be accepted there much more, rather than if I would go to a place, accepted in terms of making business with me, being socialized with, making friends. So there is a very interesting example of that. Like, if you go to, let's say, China, and you will be on a subway and meet someone who is from Canada, you and you will be like, among all the people who are locals, you will see someone from Canada, you will say, oh, you're my best friend now. That Where are you from? You will be so happy, like you're a friends who didn't see each other for 10 years. You will be sharing ideas, and you will be likely to accept advice from a person to go to a certain restaurant or visit a certain place, because you're both Canadian, right? But if you see the same person in Canadian subway, you may not even notice. It will be just so regular. But when you actually feel that unity, unlike everybody else, contrasting with the environment, that creates a connection, and we are more prone to be influenced by people like that in unity. Make sense?
Definitely. Uh, there, for example, in product management, I heard that role is challenging in many respects, but one area is that you have to influence people who are above you, have more power than you, such as CEOs, etc. And you have responsibility for the project, but you need people. You need to influence people who maybe have power over you. And for younger people entering the workforce who might need to influence an employer, someone, let's say, higher than them, using these universal principles, how can people with less power influence people like that have more experience or more power?
Yeah, yeah, very easily. And those principles are so common and paramount. They everywhere. Everybody have a mechanism to react to those principles. That it doesn't matter how much power you have. It doesn't matter how much experience you have. Maybe what what makes a difference is when people are aware of those principles and they know what that means and they're more aware of what's happening. Still, even if you are aware of that, it doesn't mean that you will be not receptive to that. So um, most of the senior executives, they have no idea about the principles, or maybe heard of it, but they really don't know, what it means, by heart, how they work, how they activate it, how they amplify it. And um, when we talk about it, we need to consider a recent discovery by Daniel Kahneman. And Daniel Kahneman got the Nobel Prize for this research in behavioral economy, and he invented a model of thinking. And this is a model is described in his bestseller book, Thinking Fast and Slow. And according to this model, there are two systems that we operate. The one is system number one. It is quick, it's reactive, and it's effortless. So it's very easy to use, and it makes decisions very, very quickly, momentarily, on the spot. But it is prone to errors, unfortunately. And there's system two. The system two is slow, it's analytical, it uses data, and it is effortful. It's really hard to use. You kind of need to make mental effort. You need to use your oxygen, and it takes time to make decisions by using system two, but they're much more accurate because you actually go through an analytical process, you making more accurate decisions. So but Daniel Kahneman discovered and proven through experiments that we use system one in 95-96% for all decisions. In other words, we make decisions impulsively, reactively, and emotionally most of the time. And that makes sense because we don't have time to analyze everything. We don't have time to analyze every decision. So, for example, let's say you want to cross the street, you never analyze the weather condition, the number of cars, the distance you need to cover. You don't analyze the speed of the car. You don't analyze your abilities. You don't do that because you just need to cross the street quickly. So you actually rely on a couple of simple things. You rely on the past experience, you believe in yourself, quote, quote, and you also believe in the drivers who are also responsible. They really don't want to harm you. They will make their decisions in case the crossing the street doesn't go as planned for you, if you would, right? And there are other factors. For example, there was a very interesting experiment in the very busy city of New York when uh, people were jaywalking. Jaywalking is actually illegal crossing the street in the places where it's very dangerous. And not only it's dangerous, but also it's a high fine for that. So will people cross the street if they follow someone else who would represent authority? And they actually, to make this experiment, they make, you know, they do it for a few weeks, and they would have two scenarios. So one scenario, someone would be dressed up in a t-shirt and jeans, and they measured how many people actually follow that person jaywalking, right? And the second scenario, they would have somebody in expensive suit, in a tie and gold, and looking very rich. And they wanted to measure how many more people will follow somebody who look like an authority. It appears that it was 50% more people would follow the person in the suit rather than the person in the jeans, and there was no really any difference because it was the same place, the same condition, the same group of people, like random people. They didn't even try to gather, wait for a certain moment, and that only difference was appearance of the person. So when people see somebody who look like authority, they actually tend to follow them. This is how we make decisions. So um, uh, back to your question, how a less experienced young people could influence the other seniors with more power. Uh, so the principle is actually about making mental shortcuts. So it appears that we are so bombarded with different options that we need to make decisions very, very quickly. And the system one is that our collection of mental shortcuts. We all have mental shortcuts, we use them all the time. And the principles are about using those mental shortcuts. They are reciprocity, liking, unity, authority, social proof, consistency, and scarcity. And those principles are kicking in, together or separately for us to make decisions. So the first three about building relationships, building trust, reciprocity, liking, and unity. The second two are about decreasing uncertainty. They're social proof and authority, like uncertainty in terms of like whether I buy this product or not, do I make the wise decision? And the third group of two are the to generate action. So there are commitment and scarcity. And how are they used? You can use those principles and understand what you kind of need to understand where you get stuck or where you cannot find agreement or what you want to emote in people, and then you understand what you're coming short of, and then you can use a principle to generate the necessary result. Okay, so there was a very interesting example of an entrepreneur. His name is Joe Girard, and Joe Girard used the process. He was a car salesman, and he used the principle of liking. So he was selling cars, and he was actually in the world record. He's in the world record, Guinness World Record book for selling so many cars for his 12-year career or 13-year career. So what he did, he actually said, I made sure that people like me and I gave them a fair price and people like me. That's all I did. Give them a fair price. That means I respect them and I respect their interest and make sure that they like me. And how he did this, he actually selling postcards to people every month for his 13,000 clients that he accumulated over years. He would send a postcard to everyone every month. And on a postcard, there was nothing except the one phrase, I like you, and his name. That's it. I like you, and the name. Of course, postcard was by season and by holiday, but it was not a lot written there. But it was just projecting that he is liking those people, and and people trusted him, and they were reciprocative to that. So um, that tell us when people like you, they will choose you to do business with, and they don't want to some oftentimes we don't want to make the perfect price. We just want to avoid a foolish choice. We just want to be wise, and we don't want to be unwise in our choice. So if the price is a little more or less, that's fine, because you are connected with the person and you trust the person that they will give you back for what you pay. So from this perspective, the same thing about influencing seniors. Even a simple postcard with the handwritten customized message that delivered by a certain time, that would make a lot. It will be very influential. The seniors will choose you. And what young ambitious people facing? They're facing a lot of competition. Everybody want to be chosen. Everybody want to be funded. Everybody want to be mentored. Everybody want to be supported and promoted. That's what they face. But how the seniors choose you to be promoted and supported and funded? Well, where this is where you need to actually be influential, and you will get a prospective project. You will be mentored to succeed with that, and you could actually do uh, much better than the others if you apply the principles of influence. So a simple gift like a postcard or maybe just showing respect to senior members, showing them that you're appreciating their input. It's common to think that the seniors have all the kudos and all the admirations. They're not. They're actually operating when they give a lot to other people and they have nothing in return. Absolutely nothing. Nobody even bothered to say thank you to them, and they give so much to people. So when you genuinely express your appreciation to them and you show them that you like them and you're saying how much it means to you that they support you, that could be very influential too.
Well, Vladimir, you shared with us how to use negotiation in sales, how to use influence in business. You have an incredible amount of experience, and it's been a real pleasure speaking with you today. Is there anything that you wanted to share that we didn't have a chance to touch on?
Thank you, David. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and um, thank you for your questions. They are very good questions. I think that we could we could continue talking about negotiation and the influence. If anyone wants to learn more about that, maybe more practical advice about activators and amplifiers. So, for example, the principle of reciprocity has two activators. One is a gift, another concession, and they have several amplifiers, meaningful, unexpected, and customized. There are amplifiers of the reciprocity, and how to avoid mistakes, how to not apply the reciprocity principle in a way that it will ruin the result. So, for example, rewards are not really reciprocative because rewards are kind of rewards for what you do, or discounts, or like free oil if you repair the engine is not really free. It's kind of like a discount. It's something that attached to what you pay to, and um, so essentially, you need to know all of this in order to apply principles the right way. So if any of you have a desire uh, to learn more about this, to discuss, to maybe ask your questions and maybe ask about your difficult situation and what you say and how you negotiate, how you deliver that message, what result you may shoot for, or maybe you say like, I'm about to give up on this, but maybe I will get the last shot on it. Or you say, I don't have any leverage, but instead of saying like, I will just walk away from that, maybe I can have a shot. So you can join my easy start sessions, and those easy start sessions where you ask any of your questions, and we can talk about any challenging situation that you have. And I believe, David, that you also have certain sessions that you host, like sprints, where people can come and they can just get educated about something, or maybe go through a certain case study and scenario. Um, is that true, or I'm getting off track here?
Absolutely, yeah, yeah. We can include that in the show notes.
All right.
Where can people follow you?
Well, they can follow me on my website. It's businessrelationships.coach or businessrelationshipscoach.com. It's the same thing. They
Okay.
can find me on LinkedIn by my name, Vladimir Bushin. I'm pretty unique. I don't know anybody named Vladimir Bushin so far. Well, I know one person, but he's a famous author in Russia. But yeah, please connect with me, and let's continue talking.
Okay. Well, thank you once again. It was a pleasure speaking with you today.
Thank you very much, David. That was a very good conversation. Appreciate that.